Welcome to Beyond the Press Release, a production of Gore Column in which we take the time to speak with small cap executives after they put out important news. Today's news, it's important. We're happy to have him back. Patrick Levasseur, President and CEO of Beauce Goldfields, trades on the venture exchange on the stock symbol BGF. For those who are new to the story, because gold is starting to climb, interest starting to come back into the junior resource space, Beauce is very close to discovering where the gold from Canada's first placer gold rush came from. The company's flagship property is home to Canada's first gold rush that predates the Yukon Klondike. In fact, the area Beauce controls produced the largest gold nuggets in Canadian mining history, between 50 ounces and 71 ounces. Their exploration has discovered a major fault line as a possible source of the placer gold channel. Helping that was a fantastic story where they recently found and acquired a treasure trove, all pun intended, a treasure of exploration information about the property that everyone thought had been lost for 30, 40 years, only to find it in the basement of one of the local merchants. And today, the press release we're talking about, it's big. Trenches identify multiple gold-bearing bedrock structures just 25 meters from the historical placer gold channel. We know for some of you, you're not going to know what that means exactly. That's why Patrick's on. Patrick, welcome back, my friend.
Thanks, George. Thanks for having me back.
Before we get into the specifics of this press release, because obviously it's a technical press release, so it has its difficulty for non-geologists. How big is this? Just give everyone a sense at home for how big this is to have identified these and what does it mean to identify multiple gold-bearing bedrock?
Well, it means everything. As some long-term shareholders know, but I'll quickly repeat it, is that, in Beauce, where we are, it's, very, very quick, is that there's a placer gold channel that goes for 6 kilometers. 2 areas on that placer channel was heavily mined in the past. Placer gold, always placer gold production, not amateur, with industrial scale gold production. So the emphasis for the last 150 years, intermittently, has always been on exploitation versus exploration. And so nobody ever put to the grind to find out where the placer gold came from. Obviously it came from somewhere. Now
they're literally just scooping, taking out the gold, cashing in, and going home. They weren't trying to find it.
Yeah, you basically from 1860s to 1910s, they were doing underground, they were doing shafts and then underground drifts to scrape up the auriferous till, which is the placer gold was stuck in an auriferous till of about 1-2 meters, bringing it up and washing it out to get the gold. In the 1960s was different, and that's another section about 2 kilometers off, and that's where we did the recent work, the Saint Gustave area, which instead of making shafts and tunnels, it was 1960s, it was giant earthworks. In other words, having giant drag lines and dredges and just stripping the overburden to get to the gold, making artificial ponds to float the giant dredging factory to get to gold. Now, that being said, is that we were the first one, again, there was a total lack of knowledge of what was the geology around this deposit.
Yeah, they're just cashing in.
There was nothing, we were the first. It took us years to piece this together. The first hint was back when we were in Eurogold, is when we did our own sonic drilling. And again, in wanting to identify if we can mine the placer gold, but in doing so, it's where we found out that the gold grains were not rounded. They were angular and pristine. In other words, they did not travel far. First clue, this came from a source really close by. The other big important source is that in 2018, we identified a major fault line which goes along strike the property, which basically almost follows a placer channel from one end to the other. That's the biggest find. And the angle was right in that. And it would come up right underneath close to placer channel. Now, what we discovered recently is that we decided to dig these massive trenches as deep as we can go, wherever the
How deep is that? How deep is that, Patrick?
Oh, not that deep. Basically, it's you're going from 1 meter to basically 5 meters.
Okay.
What happens is that at a certain point, the bedrock does dip to create the placer channel really steep. So we stop there. However, what's nice is that there's one extension of the property which the placer channel does solve sort of like a north-south extension of it, and then continues northeast southwest. And so we were going to dig trenches as close as possible to that before the bedrock dips. And what we found was great. What we found is that we saw the property at a certain angle. All the bedrock structures is all basically parallel, all sandwiched like this, vertically going up, and they're all striped bands of going. Basically, you got volcanic rock, you got sedimentary rock, black shells. Again, volcanic rock, and it just repeats itself like that. And what's at is that the class it's called a splay. Is that basically what it is that there was the major fault line is the driving factor, but off the major fault line you got all these sandwiches of splays that were pushed
and
up.
why is that important, Patrick, to the layman?
Okay, is that what we found is that in very specific of these sandwiches, okay, were these structures, and that's where we were finding basically nice gold grains that we bulk sampled. And we found multiple of these structures. So now we understand the structure, and it's called a splay. Basically, is that there's sort of secondary faults, you could say. We have the main fault and then secondary faults, and just they're going parallel northeast, southwest, all along the placer channel. And wherever the placer channel seems to have cut these, we found gold in some of these structures. Otherwise, can reach. Now, most likely, there's many of them, with maybe even a major one right underneath the placer channel. But it's the first time we have an understanding of what to look for and where the gold is found, in what type of rock type structure the gold is found, and the structure to go. So now we know what to look for when we're going to drill.
So have you found the source of the placer gold, or how to find the source of the placer gold now?
Both. We probably found a few sources of the placer gold for sure, which has been erosion. And how do we know that? Well, besides basically, you might want to put it up a bit later. Basically, that map that came with the press release. If you look at the top part of the map, we show the trenches. And so what's nice is that we saw that the band that we were following, that we were sampling, basically disappears when the placer channel starts. In other words, the placer that was in there is obviously from an erosion of some of those, those structures that we've announced, which we identified the gold in. And another thing is that, again, similar to what we did last year when we announced we found visible gold in one far off trench, right, which is in the same line as the trenches we just did. The gold is the same. In other words, what I mean is that when we analyze the gold into electron microscopy, it has exactly same silver content as the placer gold that was drilled by a year ago. So it's the same gold, same source, the same tracer elements. So we have proof basically that the placer gold is from these structures. That is beyond doubt.
So what is next steps now? How do you capitalize on this?
Well, next step now is that basically we're going to bring in some drilling. We're going to bring the drill. It's already booked in that. And we're going to start testing these structures. And that's important. And we believe that there's many of these structures. We found a few of them. But if we look at, we know the placer channel continues. And there's probably probably even an important structure right underneath the placer channel. It's the main channel. So we have to drill that. So we're going to be drilling that section and to prove the hypothesis. And if it does, well, I mean, that's just huge. I mean, these structures just go on and on. They go on, they might go on, they might continue as long as the placer channel, which the placer channel itself, we know is at least 6 kilometers long.
So if you're right, and I'm not actually give a resource estimate or anything like that, but if you're right, how big of a find do you think you have under your belts?
George, that's what do we say? That's the $1 billion question. I can't go forward, but I mean, for sure, look, all we know is that, look, we found multiple structures that has gold in it. We didn't grade. We don't have a grade on the structures because we took the gold grains out to study them. But we're taking out nice grains, as the press release saw. Some of them up to 1.5 millimeters big, which is pretty considerable. Now again, and We're talking, multiple structures. These structures continue at depth. We know the main fault line has been identified going down at least 2 kilometers. So think of the fault line going 2 kilometers, going out at I forgot the exact degree angle, but then all the splays from it. So yeah, you're talking a lot of bands that have gold in it, and these bands could continue, as far as we know, maybe up to 6 kilometers long and many kilometers deep. Not that you can, but at least we know that what we're looking for is the splays all come up and outcrop the surface. Now they cover with an overburden, so we know basically what we're looking for. We don't have to go that deep to confirm that we're onto a structure.
How deep do you have to go? How deep do you have to go, Patrick?
Well, we just have to go through the overburden, which can be anywhere from, just 1 to 2 meters to up to 25 meters in some parts.
So that's nothing. That's nothing in your world.
No. Is that we don't have to be, if our drill holes is not, if we're hitting a structure, we know we don't have to follow the structure many meters just to confirm that whether it has gold or not. So what we plan to do many relatively shallow depth drill holes, which should be enough to test all of this.
And here we are, it's the middle of May. So this is prime drilling season in Quebec.
It is.
No snow, no wetness, none of all that. So how much drilling are you going to do here? How far, typically how long is a season for how long can you drill? And is that enough time for you guys to potentially have a really good handle on what you've got? In other words, will you have a lot of your answers in 2021?
Yeah, I believe so, George. Basically, what we have lined up right now, which it could be extended, but we have lined up right now is we're going to do 4,000 meters and then about 20 holes, which average maybe, like I said, they're not deep holes. Average maybe 200 meters a hole of diamond drilling. Maybe 20 holes or so. We could see that could be extended. The amount of holes could be extended. We're well funded for it, and 20 holes should take maybe a month to 2 months of drilling with 2 shifts. So what's nice?
And when you're starting, Patrick, when do you guys think you're starting the program?
Well, I haven't officially announced it, so I'm not going to stick to anything.
Okay.
But I could basically say we will be drilling. The driller is lined up. Contract has been signed. We're ready to go. And when I have my start date, I'll be announcing it. But basically, this summer we're drilling. All
right. So this summer is going to be a very exciting one for you, the town of Beauce, all your shareholders. I mean, is this the moment you've been waiting for since you started piecing together Beauce? A long time ago? You had your theory, you think you knew what was there, but you had to piece together. But are you almost there where you're going to be able to?
One thing for sure, we solved the mystery of where the gold came from and where is it from. That we know. We know it's from these splay structures, possibly even the main fault itself could be gold bearing, but the splay structures basically is that we know has gold in it. That's a biggie right there. So we've solved the geology question of where the gold is from, right? Now it's a question to find out how much gold there is, in which structure it would be in, and this is where the fun starts.
So I'm glad you said that, because I was about to ask you the question. Is Beauce now in a position where it's just a case of not if we have any gold or we have gold, is now in a position to say, hey, we know we're going to have gold. It's only a question of how much now?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, we since we identified there's many more structures of these, right? But at least the structures we did identify, we know there's gold in those structures. We know it's in the press release, nice images, we have gold. But let's see how much gold there is where there could be concentrations within these structures. All these things we have to find out by drilling. We're basically there now. We could do some more trenching, maybe to extend some of these some of the splays. Now that we know that where some of them are, we can actually bulk that, which is something which is really interesting. We might do to have basically, so we can compare how much gold we have when you bulk versus drilling, to have a bulk to drill ratio, using an idea of what type of deposit model for future that we might have. But really now we're coming down, to classic exploration where we got to drill it.
In my intro, I talked about the treasure trove of data that you found that everyone thought had been lost, and it's the 344 drill logs.
Yeah.
Were those useful to this part of the
I'm
of the
glad you
work?
asked. Yes, I'm glad you asked. Like, if you again, we'll refer back to that map there that we showed, and this is where again it helped confirm the model of the splays being sourced of the placer channel. Is that the two trenches we found gold in? If people refer to trench 2021, 2020-02, we found gold at the bottom of the trenches, and they line up perfectly to right next to those were drill holes from those lost drills that we found. There was one line of drill, the SW3 drill holes. And again, they line up perfectly. I said is that, we got these trenches, and the trenches, we couldn't go further because the cliff suddenly drops off.
Sure.
And that's where the bottom of that cliff, the placer channel is there. Now, if you continue the line, basically, let's say the trench 1, trench 2, we have gold here, straight line here, placer channel is here. Well, the drill holes that were right in front of the other trenches that we couldn't continue because it dips off, those were drill holes that has gold in it, historical gold. So again,
Wow.
It confirms that basically the reason they have gold there is because, now here comes the question: were they drilling placer, or were they actually drilling into one of the splays? So it could be basically where there's drill hole where people take it for granted that if they were hitting, because they were doing churn drilling, RC drilling. So when they were drilling up some gold, and if they found gold, they would just say, oh well, if they found a lot of gold, it says, well, we probably drilled up gold we probably drilled into bedrock, into a crevasse, and placer gold fell in it. That's what we're doing. Well, the model is starting to be a bit more complicated than that, and not complicated once we know it. Is that they might have actually been drilling into bedrock, but in saprotelic bedrock, in heavily weathered bedrock, where the gold was there, and then the gold simply got eroded and was loose, but the nuggets were there. They were always been there. They just got sort of weathered in there. So that's what they were drilling up. So there's a possibility that, for example, the SW3 line, which our trenches stop right in front, but it's in direct line of the gold that we found in the splay, they were actually drilling into the splay itself, from what it looks like it. It's another strong indicator that historical drill holes might not just be an indicator of where placer gold is, might actually be an indicator of where one of these bedrock, gold-bearing bedrock structures, or one of the splays, basically volcanic rock interjection with quartz, that's what it's in. These bands might actually be an indicator that there's one right there.
Last question for you. The township of Beauce has been very, very supportive of the company and everything, and been very accommodating. Basically, you guys have had and continue to have a great partnership. What is that? You would almost think that they'd be the first people that, they're the first point of contact. Is it too early to know what their level of excitement is or optimism could be for this summer?
Well, I mean, I know that we have great support, great shareholders. What unfortunately, COVID makes it difficult because
Right.
The contact I had with the people was it was basically kitchen table discussions with a lot of them. I know them. I would just drive up to their property and we'd be talking then. So COVID, especially now in the Beauce, there was a shutdown lately. It doesn't stop our work, not forever, but it does. It did make meeting some of the people a bit more difficult. But in the short term, it doesn't change anything, because where we've made this is important. Where we've made this discovery and we'll be drilling will be on real estate owned by Beauce Goldfields, not just the claims, but the real estate itself. So we have full unimpeded access to do all our work.
All right. So I've asked you everything I can ask you, and you've answered everything you can answer without, forward-looking statements or guesses or things like that you wouldn't be allowed to do. So I won't dig anymore. I won't drill anymore, pardon the pun. But I'll leave the last word to you, because clearly you and I are going to be together a lot this summer. Whenever you put out your press release announcing the drill program, we're going to have you back on. Then after that, I'm sure it's going to be every 3 weeks. In the meantime, last word to you. What do you want your shareholders to know, or what do you want them to take away from how you're feeling about today's press release?
Well, basically, I mean, I don't know if my excitement showed through this press release, but I mean, I'm really, I'm happy. And of course, there's a certain, after 150 years, is that, thanks to Matt Cachet-Laflèche, our lead geologist on this, we figured out a big riddle. For a lot of people were asking, where did this gold come from? Nobody knew. Well, now we know. We know. We figured out the geology behind this, and which for me, it's a great accomplishment. But now, what's the fun thing now? The fun part really starts. Every drill hole can be a surprise. What are we going to get? And that's the
I
fun
almost feel like I want to come camp out in Beauce this summer. I want to come live in Beauce, camp out there, and just be a part of the energy.
I mean, look, there's nothing more exciting than a drill campaign in this business. You know that, George, eh?
Of course.
I mean,
especially when you found that there's some,
nice
and not all drill campaigns are the same. Some are George's Gold Company. We saw Shiny Rock in Greece somewhere 50 years ago. We're going to take a shot at it. We don't want that. You're at the complete opposite end of the spectrum, and that's what really makes it exciting. We know nothing's guaranteed. We want to tell that to people at home, but you've really honed in. You've got a lot of evidence, and you're really honing in on the final conclusion here.
We do, yeah. Basically, is that we now know where to look for it. The gold. We know what type of structure the gold should be in, and that's really important. So basically, now we have an idea where not to look and where to concentrate and not concentrate, and which is but the drilling is going to help us immensely. Drilling basically will help us identify, the structures, the splays. And we don't have to waste time. We'll know for one drill hole. Basically, is that we're doing one splay, another splay. Good. Now we know where one splay is, another splay is. Let's reward.
That sounds great. So Patrick, whenever you put out that news, we're gonna have you back because I'm excited, and you definitely look the happiest you've ever looked. And you're still geologist happy. You're happy, but you're still reserved, right? Which is great. People like me get a little more excited, but can't wait to have you back. Congratulations on today's announcement and this milestone.
Thanks, George. Thanks for interviewing me. Yep.
To everybody at home, you've been watching or you've been listening by podcast on Spotify, Google, Apple, your favorite podcast platform. To Patrick Levasseur, he's the president CEO of Beauce Goldfields, trades on the venture exchange under the stock symbol BGF. For those who are new to the story, there's going to be a lot of you. Make sure you do your due diligence. 2 ways to do that. First, get to the Agoracom profile of Beauce. We know there's a lot of geology. There's a lot of technical terms here. So what we've done on the profile is really broken it down to layman's terms. That's our job, layman's terms. So you really get a good understanding of what Beauce is doing. And then hop over to the Beauce Goldfields website. You can do that straight from Agoracom and do your further deep dive due diligence, because you've heard, you've watched what Patrick had to say. Gold markets are starting to climb again on inflation worries in the US. Timing may not be better right now, but we can't make that decision for you. I want to be very clear. You've got to make that decision, and you can only do that by doing your due diligence. So do it, so you don't tell us 12 months from now we didn't tell you so. Have a great day. See you next time.